toilets at the end of the corridor, an accessible toilet by the lift. That's the end of my air hostess speech. I think most of you have helped yourselves to some refreshments. As I say, we have apologies from the biscuit monitor tonight. Tonight, Peter will clerk, Laura, Sarah, Becky and Rachel will manage minutes, questions board, participation settings and the IT generally. The meeting is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel. For any councillors attending via Zoom, please use the yellow hand, and for anybody else on Zoom, please ask questions through the Q&A board. Okay, first thing on the agenda tonight is a presentation from Toby Colfe on behalf of People for Packsaddle. So Toby, your microphone is on. If somebody has your clicker, away you go.
Good evening. I think the word presentation is a loose one in this case, but thank you anyway. Thank you for the evening to talk tonight. I'm pleased for the opportunity, and I offer a preemptive apology. I've got 3 young daughters at home I need to get home to put to bed, so I'm going to be one of those terrible people that speaks and then immediately dashes out after they've done their bit. I'm here to speak on behalf of People for Packsaddle. We're a community group formed in 2022. Our 3 objectives then were, and still are, firstly, to resist the ill-conceived plans of Somerset Council and Live West for residential development on Packsaddle community fields. Secondly, to bring Packsaddle community fields into public ownership and to protect them in perpetuity. Thirdly, to deliver a brighter future for Packsaddle community fields focused on PFP's 3 founding priorities: climate, conservation and community. With your forbearance, I'd like to do 3 things this evening. Please, I should say now that I've not come to ask for any money. Indeed, I've not come to ask for anything. And because of that, you'll see that I've not brought with me the usual throng of PFP supporters. We'll perhaps save that for another time. I would, though, like to, number 1, properly acquaint you with People for Packsaddle's campaign and Packsaddle community fields themselves. 2, to appraise you of recent developments with the Live West application for residential development on our fields. And 3, to introduce you to PFP's Brighter Future proposal, which many of you may have on your desk in front of you, which has been presented to Somerset Council, along with an offer from us to purchase the site for £250,000. Many of you will have visited Packsaddle community fields before, but many of you will not. I'll start by describing them, if that's okay. I don't know if references to musical theatre are kind of the done thing at council meetings, but... Oh, excellent. Good. I'm in amongst kindred spirits. In describing Packsaddle community fields, I often think of a line from Hamilton when the eponymous hero says, "I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy and hungry." Well, Packsaddle community fields, I think, are just like their town, just like their county. They are indeed a bit scrappy and a bit rough around the edges. Like their town, they are quirky, they're unconventional, they're characterful and they're charming. Like their town, they're also very old. Maps from the 1800s show the very same hedgerows and stone walls that you can see there now, and some of the trees go back much, much further. The iconic oak tree, whose image we've borrowed for the PFP logo, is protected by a TPO and is probably many hundred years old. Like their town, the fields at Packsaddle inspire strong community spirit and passion and loyalty. Despite their agrarian heritage, and contrary to the convenient fib that Somerset Council and Live West are intent on propagating, Packsaddle community fields have not been agricultural land for many, many decades. Rather, they are uncultivated and largely untended. They are wild and rugged, peaceful and, like their town, oddly beautiful. They've been embraced by local people and by local wildlife, and they've become an invaluable, irreplaceable space for both. Packsaddle community fields are home to all manner of birds, including barn and tawny owls, newts, hedgehogs, hare. I went off on a tangent wondering whether the plural of hare is hare or hares, but anyway, I digress. Deer, and yes, lots and lots of bats. We've participated in the last 3 or 4 Frome Town Council bat evening counts, and on each occasion, Packsaddle community fields have happily topped the tables. On the last one earlier this year, greater horseshoe bats were detected there, and I believe this is the first time, the only time perhaps they've been detected in Frome this year. I could be proved wrong on that one. Packsaddle community fields are, it should be remembered, a part of an internationally recognised foraging area for this protected species. A full list of wildlife can be found in the Brighter Future document in front of you. Crucially, larger animals also frequent Packsaddle community fields, humans. Packsaddle community fields are used every day by local residents, by families like mine, by the elderly and infirm people who live in our community, by the people, many of whom live alone, who have come to depend on the fields for their mental and physical well-being and for their interaction with neighbours and friends. Our fields may have made our community stronger, better, more connected. Many of you will have witnessed that community spirit for yourselves in recent months at our events. The importance of Packsaddle community fields to local people was recognised in 2022 with a designation of Asset of Community Value status. This status, as you'll probably know, is incredibly rare and incredibly difficult to achieve. In awarding the designation to Packsaddle community fields, the District Council determined, I quote, "The primary use of the land furthers the social well-being and social interests, cultural, recreational and sporting of the local community," end quote. The Council acknowledged the statements, over 100 of them, from local residents, which described why the space was so important to their lives. Again, the Brighter Future document includes a selection of those. Having had to listen to me for the last few minutes, I hope you'll understand why our community is so firmly and irrevocably opposed to residential development on these fields. We are not, they are not, selfish, callous NIMBYs. Rather, these are local people, many of whom have lived in Frome, like me, all of their lives. They care about their community, they care about their neighbours, they care about their town, they care about the world they're leaving for future generations. In 2023, Frome Town Council's Planning Committee voted unanimously to oppose the Live West planning application to build 74 homes on Packsaddle community fields. Additionally, the plans were overwhelmingly opposed by local residents, nearly 300 of whom wrote to the council. These objections can still be read on the planning portal. Not one letter was submitted in support. Live West plans have not substantively changed since they were submitted, and it's worth revisiting why Frome Town Council, amongst others, opposed them. The plans are not up to scratch. They are not in keeping with the surrounding area. They fail to meet biodiversity net gain requirements. They result in the permanent loss of an asset of community value. The plans are not sustainable. They are not policy compliant. They are not viable, as has been proven time and time again in various iterations of a viability report, and has been shown by our solicitor and by a King's Council opinion, they are definitively unlawful. In recent months, People for Packsaddle has sought time and time again to make clear to Somerset Council and the developer what has been abundantly clear from the start. The community does not accept these plans. They are objectively substandard. They are not viable and they need to be abandoned. Whether now or after the Planning East Committee meeting or later at a judicial review, they will have to accept that inescapable fact. The question then becomes, what happens next? Earlier this year, we made an offer to Somerset Council to buy Packsaddle community fields for £250,000. This money has been pledged to us by local people. We've received no response from the council at all. We want to bring Packsaddle community fields into permanent public ownership. We want to protect and enhance them thoughtfully, carefully, sensitively. We want to retain the existing character of the fields, characterful, quirky, wild, rugged, as I've said, but also enhance them for the sake of climate, conservation and community. We've developed a vision for Packsaddle community fields which is set out in detail in the document on your tables. We've engaged extensively with the community, something which Somerset Council never did, to ask them what they would like to see in the space. We held 2 public meetings and an online survey. Then we presented our findings and our initial preferences to a specialist consultant, First Ecology, and asked them to put together a comprehensive biodiversity enhancement plan. The results are in front of you. We're proposing a new community woodland, new seating areas, a pond. We're proposing the sensitive restoration of stone walling, the replenishment of scrub and hedgerow, the retention of all healthy trees. We're proposing something positive, inspiring, sustainable, deliverable, enduring. Our plan is comprehensively, properly, professionally researched and compiled, and we're prepared to pay for it and to put the work in. Somerset Council needs to choose now between flogging a dead horse, an application for residential development motivated by money, money and only money, and a positive communitive action story. It needs to choose between self-interest and the interests of climate, conservation and community. I'd invite you all over the next couple of days to read the document, and if ever there's any questions or you'd like to talk about them, we're very open to those. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Toby. Fiona, do you want to come back on that first?
Yeah, are we sort of taking questions? I was going to ask sort of kind of, yes, yeah, if that's, I mean, you don't have to, but yes. I mean, thank you so much for that presentation. It was really powerful and really clear, and it's amazing all the work that you guys have done. This is why I really hate our planning system, basically, because it is two things. It's top down and it's defensive. And we're sort of being offered there's sort of two ideas for this piece of land. And I will be brutally honest here, I don't think either of them are really what's right for Frome, if I'm being, very honest, and that's just my opinion. On the one hand, we have Live West's proposal, which I completely agree with you. I'm on the planning committee, objected to it. It is objectively terrible. It's, for a social housing provider, it's got very little social housing, and what it does comes at the expense of Section 106 money, and the sustainability is terrible. It's a bad design, and it does, it takes over the whole site, which clearly has massive community value. On the other hand, I really do understand where you're coming from, but we do have a housing crisis in Frome, and particularly a real need for social housing. And this site has been allocated to development, and we can argue over the rights and wrongs of that, but the fact is that for this to be taken out of development means that those houses will end up going somewhere else. Right now, most of the development of Frome is on the south side of the town, where you have Keyford Meadows and Selwood Garden Village potentially getting planning permission. And it's not really fair that all of the development gets put on one part of the town, because it will block up the roads and it will have, big issues. So we need to find ways to sort of spread it out. This site hasn't it?
No.
Oh, it's not in the thing. Oh, okay. Okay.
It's not in the local plan.
It's not in the local plan. Okay, so that's my fault. I think the broad point, though, it does still stand that we do really need social housing. I don't think all of it needs to be go over to that at all. I think there is probably a sort of a compromise here, particularly if you were to work with faculty, to come up with something that sort of did have some beautiful, sustainable, really well designed social housing, and then kept a good chunk of it as well for for everything that you've just described. But it is, it's difficult, and I understand why you've come, but that's just my opinion.
Well, thank you. And I'm not, you don't need my life story, but I'm not insensitive to the housing challenge, and I hope that people from faculty and the council would testify that we've tried all the way through the last 3 years it is now to engage with local groups and to understand the genuine housing need. What houses are needed, where, for whom. And we've tried to engage very constructively in that. Our criticism of Somerset Council has been their complete lack of engagement from the very, very start.
I completely agree.
So I'm preaching to the choir, I'm sure. Would there have been an opportunity 3 years ago, 5 years ago, to do something more kind of hybrid, more imaginative, more creative, more thoughtful? Yes, I think there would have been. Interestingly, I live near the fields, that won't come as a surprise. Had the council come to us as they ought to have done and spoken to us in those kind of terms, they might well have found a favourable audience. They didn't. I think, if I'm honest, that ship has probably sailed. We are so far down the track now, and I think crucially what needs to be recognised about this development, it has come crashing into reality. And the reality of that site, as reflected in the pre-application opinion, was that it's simply not viable for development. That is the reality of poor drainage, of poor access, of a limestone floor, which makes development very, very difficult. And so, respectfully, I agree, and kind of my personal ideological feelings about housing are a bit neither here nor there. I just don't see how you would deliver it. And I think what needs to be recognised about this space is that you have to understand what the space is and what the space contributes to the community and to the local people. And I think this has really been distilled into an adversarial situation between people who do and do not understand what this space is. And I'd invite anybody to come up and speak to local residents who have given up huge time and have attended bingo nights and quiz nights and coffee mornings every month and have raised something already in the order of £30,000, because it's critical to the way that our community comes together.
I really understand that, and I'm not sort of, and I get your point as well about how it all started, and I agree, and that's why I started with this is why I hate the planning system, because
ditto.
I want to bring in John Clark from faculty, if I may, and then we'll wrap this up because we are under pressure of time this evening with a fairly heavy agenda.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm John Clark. I'm Chair of the Frome Area Community Land Trust, and I came this evening just to hear what you had to say. And I welcome very much what you're saying. And I hear the passion and the commitment that you have demonstrated from the community regarding the site. I also hear that one of your principles is about working with the community. As a faculty, and as Fiona just mentioned, as faculty, our primary purpose is to look at land and create community-led developments, not for profit, to meet the needs of the town. As of today, there are over 1,000 people who are living in Frome, the BA11 and in Frome, who want social housing, need social housing. And I think we have to hear their voices because they're unheard. So this development, I agree with you, the Live West proposal is based on profit making. It's not based on meeting the needs of the local community and the town. It's based on making £4.1 million profit, which they then had the cheek to say they will invest elsewhere in the southwest. Well, let's look at a development which is less density, which respects the environment, and above all, respects the needs of the community. That's the point I wanted to make tonight. Thank you very much.
And thanks again, Toby, for coming with your supporting team this evening.
Thank you everyone.
Okay, it's always great to have as many members of the public here as we can for the whole meeting, so do feel free to stay, but equally, if you need to get home to put the kids to bed, you're free to leave. Okay, we'll move on with the rest of the agenda. Item 2 is apologies for absence. Peter?
We have apologies from Mel Usher, Tracy Ashford, Polly Lamb, Ben Still, and Andy Rimpmore is online.
Can I have somebody propose? I've got Anne Hills proposing that we accept those, seconded by Philip Campagna. Can I have a quick vote? That's all of us. Yes?
Unanimous.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Declaration of interest. Does any councillor have any specific interest that they need to declare in any topic this evening? Scanning the room, I'm seeing nothing on that. And the minutes of the last meeting, was there anything arising from these, Peter?
Councillors will be aware that at the last meeting there was a discussion and ultimately a vote around the Weymouth Road parking scheme. Councillors decided that they would support the revocation of the parking scheme, and the town clerk subsequently notified Somerset Council of this. We have since been trying to get an update from Somerset Council in terms of progress. And we didn't actually have a response until today from Steve Deakin, who's the parking services manager. Strangely, the indication from Steve was that he was aware that some residents continued to oppose the removal of the scheme, and that he was currently investigating an approach which, in his words, would placate those who are opposed to the removal of the scheme. I was sufficiently concerned about this to immediately write to Duncan Sharkey, the Chief Executive of Somerset Council, and also Councillor Richard Wilkins, who's the lead councillor, to clarify what was meant by this. It appeared that maybe there had been a change in Somerset Council's position, and I asked them to come back and hopefully confirm that they are still committed to revoking the scheme. As yet, I have received no reply to that, but obviously we will continue to push for clarification. I just thought you ought to be aware of that we're doing our best at the moment to try and ensure that progress is made following the resolution at the last meeting. That was it.
Yes, Martin. Can we find Martin a microphone, please?
Ask that you copy me into the emails and to Michael Dunk, the ward councillors, because this is the first I've known about it. And of course, I'm being asked all the time, when are the signs coming down?
Yeah, I'm very happy to do that. As I say, we'd only heard earlier today about this, and we'll make sure that you're kept updated, Martin, and also make sure that Mick Dunk is as well. So we'll cover that, no problem.
Okay, so notwithstanding that blatant undermining of democratic process, are we willing to accept these minutes as a true record of the meeting? Proposed by Fiona, seconded by Anne.
That's unanimous.
So now we move on to questions and comments from the public and councillors. I think we've had a presentation from Councillor Dawn Denton, who's hoping to join us later on in this meeting. Sarah?
Ask about the Environment Agency jetty that's just coming to be finished off along the river. And I think we all know who it's by and what it's for, but I think there are some questions certainly from residents and from me as well around the location, the choice to position it in such a beauty spot literally opposite a picnic table and to take a swathe of what is a beautifully parallel section of the riverbank for walking. So why there, first of all? Second of all, why could not have an agreement been made with the canoe club, who have a jetty a mere jump away, and they could have modified, improved, supported the canoe club as well? And why does it need to be so big? And how often is it going to be used? And just some general questions around it, really. I don't think there's been much information from the Environment Agency on that. So I don't know if anybody knows any more, or if we could ask some of those questions, Peter, perhaps?
We're not aware of the detail. I think that's correct.
Oh, Sarah's just saying Rob's online. I don't know whether Rob knows any more.
That's a good point.
I don't know the answers to those questions, but certainly if you want to send me those questions, I can contact the Environment Agency and see if we can get some answers. Although I do think it's almost finished now, is it? Oh, no, it's too late.
If I speak, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so Rob Holden, Environment Manager. The Environment Agency have used that spot over the years. The reason that it's so big is because, or it looks so big, I mean, it is big, but it will look particularly large when as the works are finished. It will soften as the vegetation grows back. But the reason it's the size it is to get the vehicle that will lift off the boat into the water. So it's the access way rather than the enormity of the boat. So that's why it's the size it is. That they will use it probably once every 6 months, so it won't be used often. But I think we do have to acknowledge that we are spared the hard work of managing much of the riverbank, and the Environment Agency take that role on. And so they do works to ensure that the water flows freely, that it doesn't get there's no blockages, and they do a lot of work from the boat that they launch into the river. So it's largely under the radar. It is essential works, and ultimately they have statutory powers, so they can insist to do it anyway. But this is just a stabilizing of the access point that they've always used. They're just about to be finished in terms of the works. They're removing their equipment as we speak, so that phase where the access is not quite interrupted but is impacted is over.
Thanks, Rob. There's a gentleman at the back with a related question, and then I'll come back to Sarah.
Just a quick question.
Can we get you a microphone, please?
Why do they need to? Why do they need such a big boat? They can only surely go about 100 yards from the weir up to the other end. They can get on one end.
Rob, the gentleman's asking why does it need to be such a big boat when you can only go 100 yards in either direction before you crash the rocks?
It's not a big boat. It's the fact that the vehicle that launches the boat, that physically lifts it. It's a metal flatbed boat, so it has a very, very low draft. But it has some weight to it, and so it needs a vehicle to lift it in. That's what's needed.
That's fine. Thanks, Rob.
Why do they need the boat, please?
The Environment Agency have the role of ensuring that the water flows freely through Frome, and so where there are trees that are falling into the river, where there's brash that's starting to collect and form a jam, they will go and they will unblock that jam and remove all the material. Yeah.
And it's not something we have any control over.
No, okay. One last thing. I know the Friends of River Frome want to get rid of the weir for all sorts of good reasons. And the amount of money that must have been sunk, excuse the pun, into the riverside there, when a much better job could have been done on the weir, it seems strange. And to need a boat for the only 100 yards that you can use a boat in for trees that fall down on the other 27 miles that they have to get rid of another way is bizarre.
Yeah. Sarah, do you want to come back on anything? Okay, thank you. We'll wrap that one up. Any other questions? I think I'll come to you in a minute. I think Adam wanted to speak.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Is that all right? Yeah. All right. There's a few things, but I will be brief. Gosh, last week or week before, Somerset Council entered into a 45-day official consultation with staff and unions in order to lose more than 100 posts and up to 450, which would be about 10% of the workforce until 7th of December. So there's some serious discussions going on about reducing the number of staff at Somerset Council, which will probably affect services in various ways we do not yet know, because the posts to be made redundant are not yet clear. At the same time, there's a local Government Boundary Commission for England consultation about reducing the number of Somerset councillors from 110, which is 55 times 2, to 96 perhaps, or less or more. And that consultation runs to the 20th of January. So please have your say if you want less Somerset councillors or about the same next time. Won't affect us at the moment. I've had a look at the devolution proposals. Thanks for that talk last week, and I've had a discussion, as I talked to Max earlier, about it with some officers and councillors at Somerset Council. And the gist I get is, well, why not? We should let Somerset Council should let Frome Town Council do more if it's sensible to do so, and there's benefits. So there's various details like leasehold or freehold to go. There's a lot of work ongoing. Obviously, you've been talking to officers already. And the legal capacity at Somerset Council may be an issue, but I'm sure there's ways around that. You'll come to that, I'm sure, in detail. The Packsaddle planning application itself was supposed to be heard last week, planning committee, but will now be in next year because there's a further review of the required Section 106 obligations and scheme viability being undertaken and policy compliance as well, following legal letters from Packsaddle for People group. And but next month we'll probably see the Selwood Garden Community Planning Committee in early December, so that'll be very interesting. There's obviously a letter to all parish councils, and the town council had the same yesterday, about service devolution and assets devolution from Somerset Council, and also a local plan engagement consultation, which is going on to the 30th of November. I was wondering if the town council is going to respond to that. I'm assuming so. The Somerset Council needs more foster carers. There's about 34 less than we need. So if the town council could do anything to promote that, that would be very good. There's still calls for a 20-mile-an-hour zone at Frome Field. I will talk to whoever I need to talk to about progressing that. Saxonvale discussions are continuing, as I understand it. No problems that I'm aware of. Wessex Water have a new site manager as well. If people are worried by flies, I'm going to be meeting them early next month, and I'll invite Steve Tanner to that. I think that's that. Thank you. Any questions for me, that'd be great.
Certainly, we will be responding to that consultation. I know Jane's already working on that. I'll take Philip and then Martin.
Thank you. I'd just like it to be noted, please, an opportunity for myself and any other interested councillors to meet regarding the issue of fly posting in town, as we strive to make the town centre a much more pleasant and vibrant place. We do have at times quite a blight of fly posting, which is causing, in some areas, actually causing damage. So if that could be noted, please, not for discussion this evening, at some stage for us to meet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Martin.
Just to point out that Selwood Parish Council is meeting tonight. I've been asked to relay a message from them. While I'm on the subject, Helen Kay's at that meeting, so I drew the short straw to come here. But the message is through the Vice Chair, and it's to do with a petition that they're raising to make improvements to the bypass, to try and make it obviously safer after something, I think it's 7 fatalities we've had in the last year. They will be in touch, and the intention is for us to get a group together and meet with the officers of the council probably early in the new year to look at a better way forward, because we're not happy with the current resolution to enhance the lineage. We think it needs radical rethinking, but it probably needs doing after we've heard the decision about Selwood Garden Community, because that will impact on the bypass at both ends, actually. So when we know that result, we wait for that on December the 3rd, and assuming that there will be a decision.
I know we're all keen to do anything we can to try.
Yeah, and they're welcoming Frome Town councillors to participate.
Pretty well engaged with that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. And I met with Anna Sabine this week, who's also very much on side and wants to stay closely involved with it all. So, yeah, I think all the parties that need to be are going to be getting together. And that's the important thing, just to make sure that we're all seen to be working together. Right. So,
thanks. Lisa, did you want to come in? Okay, Nick.
Yeah, good evening. Is this working? Yeah, it is now. Just to back up what Phil was saying, we have a town centre ranger who spends a lot of time trying to clear up the mess that's left by people sticking posters on street furniture. The other thing that happens quite often, and Mike is trying to deal with, is people hanging banners on railings over bridges and around the outside. That's street furniture. That also falls under. That's also an offence to attach things to it. So he'll be taken down. So could we have a formal note of that, please? Because there are organisations like our theatres, the Cheese and Grain, who have acts appearing, who go out and post things on there, and it just makes the town look scruffy and it's unhelpful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Anne?
I've got a question, Nick, specifically about that. What happens to the banners that get taken down by the ranger? Can the organisations collect them, because they cost money to produce?
Yeah, they absolutely. Mike keeps them, he stored them, and that's the arrangement around them. I appreciate some of them are really expensive, and some of them for groups who are clearly trying to do a good thing in the town. So yeah, we're not throwing them away.
Can those groups be contacted, because they have all their contact details on them, to let them know your banner's been taken down, please come and collect it?
Yeah, they have been. I've been doing that myself.
Okay, thanks. Don't see anybody else looking to raise anything new. So if it's okay, let's move on to item 4 on the agenda to hear from the recipients of the Children and Young People's Project Awards.
Thank you. I don't have a clicker. Is there one? Hi, my name's Melody Hunter-Evans. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the Children and Young People's Project Officer here at Frome Town Council. And as you've probably seen from the report that's already gone out, we're going to have some amazing organisations talk to us who have been part of our Children and Young People's projects. Oh, what's that? Oh, okay, there we go. It's not working, my clicker. Okay, fab. So I'm really not going to spend a lot of time talking at you, because actually the most important thing is to allow the organisations who've joined us tonight to have a chance to talk about the projects. There is more information in the report that's already gone out to you about where the Children and Young People's kind of grant came from. This particular bit of funding came from a Connect Somerset initiative, and the particular areas that were highlighted as having a kind of need from our children, young people and families in our community are listed just here. And these ones have come from masses of work with stakeholders and focus groups, kind of to highlight the particular areas that we wanted to try and use this grant for. It's a one-off one, it wasn't one we were going to get again. So we had an opportunity to do some really creative and exciting things with our local organisations. Can I go to the next one? And as it's so much more exciting to talk for them to talk about it rather than you listening to me, I'd really like to hand over to all of these guys now. So, Geraldine, are you happy to go from over there? Yeah.
Yeah, I can, or I can come to you. Shall I come to you?
Whatever it feels better for you.
Hello, I'm Geraldine. I'm one of the directors of Frome Baby Connections, that we're a CIC based in Frome. Our kind of overall objective is working with parents to support them in their infant feeding and parenting kind of objectives, that we run a Friday morning drop-in group up at the Key Centre. So we set up Frome Baby Link, which is a separate project, which is the funded project, with myself and my colleague here, Alice. That we work predominantly or exclusively with parents that are under 25 in Frome, that we kind of identified this group as facing quite a lot of disadvantage and not being as engaged in some of the opportunities that presented themselves already in our community. And so we have a model of support that we meet for 3 one-to-one visits. So we kind of meet with the parents, work out what their objectives are, what they would like support in their kind of parenting journey. And then we also run in pop-up sessions at 3 of our partner groups. So that's Tiny Hearts, and then the Bump to Babies and Frome Birth Talk group, and also at Frome Baby Connections group, the one that we run as well. And at those sessions, we then run information and kind of like exploratory sessions looking at the information that parents want to get themselves. So whether that's about infant feeding or sleep, or we've done some about first aid, then we're quite open to suggestions really from parents as to, you know, what they want to get from us. And that's what we've been delivering.
Amazing, thank you. I want to introduce some of the amazing work that's happening just through the Children and Young People's projects, but also offer an opportunity for anyone to ask any questions to any of the groups about the work that they've done through this. Carla, did you want to ask a question?
Hi, Geraldine and Alice, lovely to see you here. I'm just wondering if you can give a sense of how many mothers under 25 that you've seen since the project started.
Yeah, so we've started, well, we had a kind of soft launch in August, but we've been kind of up and going since September. We've had probably about 10 contacts, and then 5 of those, I would say approximately, that have gone on to then do the one-to-one sessions with us. And then we've got a kind of wider group of parents that we engage with then at those support groups that already exist as well. So really going back to when I said, you know, roughly people who are 25 and under, obviously within those groups, we can then access or give access to support to whoever comes to those groups. Yeah.
And what kind of percentage is that, do you think? Like, and how, I guess, kind of what happens afterwards?
Yeah, so when we were kind of developing our models, then I took some of the numbers from Frome Birth Centre, looking at, you know, how many eligible parents we have in that under 25s bracket, and we're kind of aiming for a 50% contact kind of number, really. But really, that kind of the 50% is taken from a kind of best estimate rather than any like hard evidence. So in terms of what happens after that, really the model as well has some scope to respond to the needs of the people that we're working with. So we have identified a couple of people that would benefit from some more one-to-one sessions that we may well be able to deliver within our budget. But overall, what we're trying to do is just to, I suppose, really change the demographic and the kind of openness of those groups as they stand, so that beyond the project, then I suppose the openness of those groups may have changed, that they may be seen as more accessible.
Great, thank you. Thank you. It's great work that you're doing.
It might be worth adding as well that our partner groups we've been working with have been really excited and impressed with the work, and we're under talks to continue for another year. Hopefully.
And I think what Geraldine and Alice didn't say at the beginning is that the funding has been able to trial this as a new thing. This is something that we recognised was a gap in an offer, and so we were really keen to support this, kind of to see whether that one-to-one offer and then the kind of moving into working in with existing groups already there is something that would work, and it seems to be working really well so far, and has had lots of really good connections made with the health visiting teams and the other kind of statutory teams that support in those early years as well. So it's a really great start. Thank you, guys. Laura, can I have the next? It's not working. Is it working now? Oh, okay.
Hi, my name's Ben Waller. I'm from Open Storytellers. I'm one of the project managers here, and I'm joined by...
My name is Joe Gilmer. I'm a project intern.
And I'm Clemmer Lewis, and I'm the special project advisor.
Recording.
I'm Ellie, and I'm also a project intern.
Okay.
Excellent. So we're here today to talk a little bit about Camarados. Camarados is a national organisation who have set up a series of groups to help support people with mental health. And we are representing the learning disabled community here in Frome, and we want to work with Camarados to introduce something called public living rooms for the learning disabled community. Can you tell us a bit about what public living rooms are, Joe?
Public living rooms where people are at school and they really want to come in at the end of term or the end of the day just to chill out and just chat to people if they're feeling low. Clemmer, what do you want to say?
Basically, we don't. We take people out of their shells. We don't exactly, the word for it, kind of make up their own minds for them. We just help them basically come out of their shell and make sure that basically all is okay.
Yeah, so it's not really about fixing people.
Not about fixing people, it's just helping them get their own word in and
Thank you, Emma. And Ellie, can you tell us a bit about what we've done so far?
We've done a lot. So me, Joe and Ben have spoken to a woman who's involved with Camarados. We have sent emails out to some groups here in Somerset asking for a Teams meeting or a visit. we were meant to go up to Devizes on the 1st of December, but it's been rearranged for a different date and a different month because it wasn't suitable for the person who runs this group on that certain day. And we are also talking to a school here in Frome to see if we can do a living room up there in that school.
That's great, and that's our next step, talking to Critchell School in Frome
Yeah.
to see if that's something we can make happen. We're also talking about running a test cafe here in Frome at the start of December.
Yeah.
So that's going to be our first real test to see how good this works.
It's going to be
And then
exciting.
it's going to be very exciting, you're right. And then from January onwards, we're going to launch the public living room proper.
Yeah.
And it's going to run every month.
Yes.
And hopefully we're going to help improve the well-being of lots of people, lots of the learning disabled community here in Frome.
Yeah, and make them be happy.
Fingers crossed. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
My apologies, I didn't realise the sound was going to come on quite so quickly with that one. I was going to introduce the fact that unfortunately the team from Open Storytellers weren't able to be here this evening, but really wanted to make sure that they'd recorded something for the session. We also realised that in that they didn't talk about the age of the sessions that they're doing, but the team there are going to be working with our young people, learning disabled young people across Frome. So they're looking kind of 14 up. And working really closely with Critchell to do a session there, but also some in, as they said, in their own building. And then they're going to be looking at other spaces in Frome to be able to set up those living room spaces for the Camerado spaces as well, to think about mental health. Ella, did you have a question?
Open for everybody. I say this having had quite a long history of collaboration between SEND provision and open access provision as a positive thing.
I think it's a question that I can take back to Ben and the team, because they're really designing what these are looking like with the young people that they're working with, particularly that first trial one in December and then with Critchell as well. But I think I can absolutely send the message back to Ben and we can forward it on. And once those sessions are kind of started and they've got, they're doing those monthly ones, then obviously I'll make sure I share them out with all of the other organisations as well, in case there are other young people and families and things that you think would be interested in those. Fabulous. Let's see if this works then. Perfect. Mark, are you happy to talk about this one?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Mark. I'm a senior youth worker at Young Somerset. I've been working with Purple Elephant after Lenka's done a lot of work, background of looking at what the need was in the local community for young people and children. One of the things was a safe provision and a youth group. And it's almost like I've gone full circle. I was a youth worker based in Frome College from 2005 to 2010 and started a youth group up at the Key Centre on the Mount when it was first built. That's sadly closed a few years ago. So it's been really, really lovely to be able to work with Sue and Purple Elephant to reopen that. We've had 3 sessions so far. The first week we got 2 young people. The second week we got 15. Then we had half term and we had 11. And we've had new people every week, which has been really lovely. You'll see from the logo at the moment, it's really dull and it's really boring, and it just says Junior Youth Group. The reason for that is because we're going to allow the young people to work together to name it themselves. We're really keen, and so you'll see the photo there of the other 3 youth workers who have all had schools-based youth work, schools-based and youth experience, which is absolutely amazing. And you can tell from the way they react during a session that they're just on it all the time, which is absolutely, it's brilliant not to have to go, can you do this? But they see a need and everyone will just jump to it. So what we're really passionate about is the youth group is owned by the children and the young people. It's for 8 to 13-year-olds. So that's middle school age group. So they're going to get to name it. They're going to get to work with us to come up with a logo. They're helping us form what the sessions are going to look like. And we worked with them within the Key Centre. If you don't know it, it's in a few sections. We can open it up, but they've decided that they want to keep an area for a quiet area. the bigger end of the hall as the games area where it's noisy and where we have music playing. And then the lobby of the Key Centre, which I'm calling the room of requirements, which they're aware, they go through it if they need to go to the loo. Apart from that, if they want to talk one-to-one, it will become a space for one-to-one. If they want to do a group discussion about something, that's where we'll do it. If we need to have a chat because some people are, getting a bit boisterous, that's where we'll do it. So it's not any particular place, but it's about meeting the needs of the young people week after week and moment by moment. We're really passionate about it. We're really, really excited to be going forward. After Christmas, we'll be introducing subs, which all the parents are really happy about. So that's going to be £1 a week to help us fund things such as parties and things at the end of terms. We're also going to be starting a tuck shop. Again, the children are going to have their say in what's in the tuck shop. But alongside that, we will be providing toast for free every single week because we're aware that some parents don't have the opportunity to feed the children and young people before they come through our doors. And we know what happens to children and young people and us when we get hangry. And we also know that some are going to come with needs and won't be able to provide as much food as their children need. So we're going to be able to feed them there, but also I'm going to be meeting with Lenka to look at how we can form a good relationship with Food Bank and to be able to refer families if that's needed. Again, it's about seeing each young person, not just for who they are, but also within the context of their wider family and trying to meet their needs as much as possible.
Thank you, Mark. And we're really excited about the partnership working between Young Somerset and Purple Elephant. And this is a really brilliant example of how those two organisations can complement and really support each other. So thank you so much. I want to see if this one works.
Nick, do you want to come in?
Oh, did you have a question? Sorry.
I did. Yeah, thank you very much for that presentation. So the 4 people in the photograph, are they all youth workers then?
So the one on the left, that's Katie. She is a teacher. Then there's me. I've been doing youth work I'm older than I look, for a while. Carla is a teaching assistant in a school over in Trowbridge. And then on the right hand, oh gosh, Tabby, she's done schools work for quite a while, and she also has quite a lot to do with Purple Elephant as well, understand things for them.
Yeah, sorry, I should have been a bit clearer. So I was trying to work out, are you all there as paid professionals working in the field?
Yes, so the way it works, so from Young Somerset, I'm employed as the coordinator, and the other 3 employed as the youth workers. So they're all paid. We're going to be looking for volunteers as well. So if anyone would like to volunteer, even if it's once a month at the youth group, we'll be doing due diligence and safer recruiting process.
That's great. I mean, the reason I ask, is to inform myself and understand a bit more, but also earlier this week, there's an incident in the town centre where a group of young women, young girls, were involved in antisocial behaviour. I describe it like that, spraying paint and being very challenging to people who challenge them back. And it's trying to understand what presence there is in the town to give an option rather than call the police who didn't come, to identify and maybe work and really understand what the needs of those individuals are that won't involve them going in the back of a police van and might be something else.
Well, it's something we were discussing earlier, isn't it? Of, where does that funding come from? So within Young Somerset, I work in Frome 2 days a week. So I support a group at Oakfield School all day on a Wednesday, and then a group from Frome College all day on a Thursday, and so it's those young people that need that little boost because they're on that edge of going either downhill, or if they get that boost, they will get through their GCSEs and on to employment or further education. And then 3 days a week over in Yeovil with young people over there. The issue is the way funding comes in is always for specific projects. It's not just there is a need in a town centre, let's employ a youth worker. That's generally not how funding comes through, which sucks. And, a project I was trying to work at, so I live over in Wincanton, trying to work with the GPs over there, is to look at funding to have a youth worker based in a doctor's surgery, for instance. So young people can know that's a safe place to go, and the doctor go, well, actually, maybe you don't need medical, maybe you just need some support. So go and chat to the youth worker for a little bit and look at the whole thing of social prescribing, but there's no money for it for children. Plenty for adults, but actually there are so many resources and connections out there for things such as working in the, going to the theatre to either act or do behind the scenes or something like that, that we could potentially direct young people to, that are free, that don't have 8-week or 3-month waiting lists just to be triaged, but the money's not there because that's not how it comes through.
Okay, I'm conscious I'm asking a lot of questions. We've got other things to cover. Just the last point. So 13 up to 18.
So it's 8 to 13.
Yeah. So who looks after 13 to 18?
There are other organisations that are supporting older young people. So YMCA is still running 2 of their sessions in there, and obviously Mark is working with older ones in some of the other work that he's doing.
Right.
It's
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, Mark. I believe that we work together at Frome College. Nice to see you again. One, thank you very much for all the work that you're doing with 8 to 13-year-olds. I think as a council, we've identified that as a real key area. And Nick, your comments about the antisocial behaviour and supporting young people earlier in that early and preventative space. I'm wondering what the engagement from schools has been like.
That's something we were talking about earlier. Oakfield, spot on, absolutely brilliant. I go there, I have a meet with Nikki Applegate every week, and we're in constant contact. Selwood and Avanti, is it Avanti? Yeah, basically, they don't want to know. And it's not for want of trying, they just want to do everything in-house, which is really sad, considering, like, when I was here before, Selwood always welcomed everybody to help. So that has been really disappointing. Frome College, again, they've been really good. The process of going through getting the right young people is tricky, because I think because the information was given to them quite late, then they didn't necessarily get all the information that was needed in order to refer the correct young people. So initially in this first intake, and we're going to tweak that work. I mean, I know that's not really what this is about, but we're going to tweak it. But it's about encouraging schools not to give us those young people that the teachers can't cope with because the behaviour is bad. It's about those young people who, like me when I was at school, are just kind of plodding along, but because dyslexia didn't exist when I was at school, there was no support.
We are going to need to wrap this up.
You and I will pick up a conversation.
Yeah, okay.
I'm really happy to link up anyone that has further conversations for any of the organisations. Lisa, I'll make sure you've got them if you don't have it already. Thank you. Sorry, Mark. Eleanor, are you happy to do yours from over there, or would you like to come up? Yeah? So Ellen doesn't know, but I added a couple of video clips in of some of the go-karting, just really quick ones. It's all good. But yeah, I'm hoping that this works. I thought I would start with some young people making lots of whooping and cheering for the amazing go-karts, and then hand it over to you, Ellen, to talk a bit more about the go-kart project.
About the go-kart. Okay, hello, my name is Ellen, and I run Super Roots Outdoor Kids, which is a CIC not-for-profit, really focusing on addressing inequality of access to forest school and adventure play. That really is my focus, and though I've been doing forest school for a long time, since moving to Frome 3 years ago, or just under, the focus has been working with groups, and particularly with the council, around risky play, and kind of offering more opportunities or more access, really, to those activities that are deemed risky play. So access to tools, And so anyway, let me get to the point of the go-karts. Well, I have been commissioned by the council twice before to run kind of design and, go-kart build design sessions. This was to open up those sessions to a wider full-day event where working with other partners, targeting children, communities that perhaps do not book on onto other events that perhaps, not that I've run, that other, yeah. So this was a full day in partnership with other organisations using scrap materials that gave the opportunity for children to be more adventurous and imaginative, using tools, collaborating, meeting other families and peers. And I would say we had a brilliant run-up sessions where we kind of went through tools, but then this large community day was it was a great day.
Can I just point out that go-kart didn't need too much repair after I sat in it?
Not at all.
Oh, it is. It's one of the ones that went down the hill in one of the video clips.
I would just, so I suppose a couple of things I'd like to add are the fact that this is kind of connected and linked to a Green and Healthy Play residency, part of the wider Green and Healthy Frome project at the moment, well, 3-year project. Superroots has a residency with Adventure, Future Shed, all about green and healthy play, which is about linking communities, cost of living, well-being, environment, and health. And so really underpinned, although it's called Go-Kart Project, it's actually called Design and Build. And Design and Build using scrap materials, highlighting the fact that we can be climate conscious, climate aware, and while given an opportunity for particularly those children, those kind of young teenagers that parents often feel they struggle with, to find things that engages their young people, male and female. We had a good split down the middle of male and female carpenters there, supporting those young people, empowering those young people. Although I say carpenters, they're actually play workers, forest school leaders, park rangers.
Great day, really, yeah. And I really think running through these 4 projects has been so uplifting. It's invaluable.
Amazing. And I want to make sure that if anyone had any questions for Ellen or Anne.
Can I say one thing? I'm really sorry. I really wanted to add in to what they were talking about in the last, because, it's really crucial what you were saying. Well, what about those other children? What about the children we come across and they're spray painting or they're doing something considered naughty, or someone will call the police? What do we do? This has been a discussion that's been talked about for quite a long time now within those children and young people providers, but particularly trying to get the children and young people provider network happening again, and a real access to the issue. How do I know what's going on? Where is it? Where does it say? There's a huge amount of information on the Frome Town Council website. Melody herself does a huge amount of information gathering, but it's such an enormous, the find network is enormous, and you have to be quite switched on, have the time and the resources to go through that. And it's really important that there are discussions around a single, easily accessible place to log on to, have a look and find, that's kind of regularly updated about what is going on, what is free, and with a search. It will take time, but I think it's really important.
Certainly something we've been talking about for some time.
Yeah.
Okay. I think on that,
Was there any questions?
any other questions?
Will it happen next year? Yay!
If there are any questions that you think about afterwards, or that you'd like to chat to any of the organisations that have been really kind and coming along and talking about all of the stuff today, please do let me know, and I can make sure that we can link you up and further all those conversations, because the more energy and interest that we have in all of this stuff, the much better that we can do to support all those children and young people in Frome as well. My last slide was just also to let you know that the pod were also successful in an application to do a seed pod project, which is like an after-school project, particularly for young children and young people with disabilities. But that project isn't going to start till January, so they didn't feel like they could come and talk to everybody tonight about that where it not started. But I'm really happy to come back and chat to everybody at a later date when we've got that going. And that's me. Thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you very much, Melody. Okay, moving on to the Frome devolution prospectus. Max, come and... You can have a clickery thingery, whether it works, seems to be a bit hit and miss. Yeah.
Yes. Good evening. So my name is Max Wyde. I'm a Park Ward councillor, and I've been, I guess, leading on this whole question of unitarisation and devolution from the new Somerset, newish Somerset Council. It feels quite old now, doesn't it? I just want to start by just saying some thanks to some people who have produced the document, which I think is on your tables, and is certainly on the website. And I think looks really, really good and looks really, really professional. I'm going to take you through some of the content of that, but I particularly wanted to thank Peter and Rachel for very hard work and for indulging my obsessive last-minute edits. So thank you very much for all of that. I hope it stands us in good stead. I was slightly underwhelmed when apparently Adam said that the response from the Somerset Council thus far had been, why not? Whereas I think it should be, wahey, because actually there is a huge amount in here for both the Town Council and for Somerset Council as a whole. So I just wanted to kind of say where we are, and some people who've heard some of this stuff before, so my apologies, but there are also some quite new people in the room, which is brilliant. So it'd be useful perhaps just to fill people in on some of the history of this. Clearly, the new Somerset Council came into being about 2 years ago now, and despite all of the promises that this would solve all of Somerset Council's financial problems, they almost immediately went to the brink of bankruptcy. And part of their response to that then was to say there are lots of assets that we want to let go of now, and that we want town and parish councils to pick up. If you look across the whole of Somerset, there are numerous of these deals, agreements, if you like, that have been made, notably in Bridgewater, in Yeovil, in Wellington. So we are in the queue for all of that, but we're hoping that we can perhaps do something slightly different than just indulge in Somerset's fire sale. We're hoping we can do something a bit more long-term and a bit more sustainable. So I just wanted to kind of say, so this is a watershed moment, really. If you look at Adam talked earlier on about what Somerset's about to do, which is probably to shed about 500 staff. But they will also let go of an awful lot of responsibilities for many other things. So there's a kind of moment really for us, which is if we don't take advantage of some of the assets that we're talking about will just be lost forever. So it's important, if you like, that we seize the day and work with those assets and services. There is a question for us though, which is that some of the things that they're letting go, do we want them? And if we do want them, what would we do differently with them? So that we're not just not just rescuing Somerset Council. What we're actually trying to do is to build a better town. And so that's really important that we say that. And we think that the crisis, in inverted commas, is best responded to, therefore, not just by Somerset looking at short-term savings, but by devolving powers, assets, budgets to us, because we think we can make a better job of them and therefore create a more successful place and a place less in need of emergency and crisis services. So there's a kind of rule of thumb here, really, which is that if it really matters to us and doesn't so much matter to them, then it probably belongs with us. And the other rule of thumb, I think, is if it really depends for its success on local networks, local knowledge, local relationships, then it also belongs with us. And there are themes, if you like, that you will see that go throughout this whole presentation. We tried to turn this round. You know, a lot of towns and parishes will kind of say there's almost like a threat that things are going to be dumped on us and we need to resist this threat. Whereas I think we've tried to kind of turn it around and say, what does a successful place look like? What is it that we would want to see in our town to know that it's doing really well? And then the big question is, what assets would be useful to us in trying to fulfill that vision? So we think there are 4 things that we need. We need good assets and infrastructure in the town. Assets are many of the things that we've been talking about today, but there are also things like connectivity, public transport, decent buildings, decent roads, all of those things. Broadband connectivity, digital connectivity, all of that are the kind of the basis upon which a successful town is built. We also need a thriving place. So we need a place which is a good environment for people to come and invest and do business in the town, employ people in the town, provide the kinds of jobs for people in the town so that they have good good incomes and a good basis from which to build their lives. We want really better well-being in the town. So some of the stuff that certainly come out of the picture that you will see later on suggests that there are some parts of the town that are not well catered for. And we've heard some examples of that this evening. So it's pointless having a thriving town if not everyone is included and not everyone benefits from that. So that's really important. And the final thing is that we really need to improve our sustainability and improve our resilience. And the question we've had to address then is, what is it that Somerset Council has that we might be able to use in pursuit of that goal? I'm a very visual person, so forgive me. But if you turn that thing on its head and look at and try and kind of build, in a sense, a place that's more successful, that's the sort of pyramid that comes out of it. There are certain things that we think kind of contribute towards all of that. And those are some of the things that we want to name. Somerset Council, of course, does things in all of those different areas. So there is the danger, if we don't seize the moment, as I was saying earlier on, that actually, rather than things getting better, things get worse. The town diminishes as a whole. So we've organised the prospectus then to try and answer the question, what are the assets that we want to have devolved to us as a place? This is very glitchy, this thing here. So I hope that makes sense. That's what we're trying to do. And so we've really got 4 areas where we're saying we would like to control more assets and more powers and more responsibilities. I just want to say also that this is a prospectus, okay? It's not a plan. We're not asking people to agree to this in terms of all of the costs that might be associated with this. We're trying to set an intention for the future. Quite how quickly we get there is a question for us. Quite how much this costs is a question for a debate really between us and Somerset Council. We strongly suspect, given their current financial circumstances, they're unlikely to give us things that come with significant amounts of funding. In fact, we almost certainly will need to do things which are both cheaper for Somerset Council and improve outcomes for people. That's the test of best value, and we can't stand back from that. 4 areas then that I think are really important to us, and I just want to kind of go through them. So there's an awful lot of words here that you can read within the prospectus itself, but this really kind of sets out the vision under those four areas. But I can kind of integrate that into this next part of the presentation as we go along. So one of the first things then is open spaces and the depot. So we've already heard from people about the importance of open spaces this very evening. What we know is that Somerset will let go of about 650 open spaces across the town. Some of those are the size of this table, and some of those are the size of this floor plate. They are different. Some of them have got very little potential, i.e. they will just probably be as they are. But some of them have enormous potential, and it was really interesting listening to the people for Packsaddle presentation about what you might do with an open space. Sadly, that piece of land is not on Somerset's devolution asset register, as you probably know. But there are quite a lot of those open spaces that are. And so throughout the prospectus, you'll see 3 stages. So the first stage is take it on. The second stage is reimagine it. And the third stage is really to deliver something different. So if we took on those 650 open spaces, the question is, what would we then do with them that's different to what we do now? Because all that happens on them now is the grass gets mown from time to time. But there is so much potential in many of those spaces, and councillors have been looking into that and thinking about how that might be different in the future. So take them on in the first place, otherwise they just become scruffy abandoned places. Take them on, manage them, but then work with communities to do something different and do something better with them. So that is a very significant asset transfer, but it presents a really significant opportunity to us. And even some of the presentations that we were having this evening about some of the activity, all of that needs space. It needs open space. And so we don't want to lose those open spaces. We want to take them on and to develop them. No, not all 650. So at the back of the prospectus, you'll see the ones that we're willing to take on. But it's not all 650, but it is quite a sizable number. And it also includes all of the town's play parks, which is, again, absolutely key for some of the things that we've been talking about this evening, to take those on, but also to develop them. So that's just really, really important. There's the other part of this equation is the depot, which is the building up by the recycling centre, which is owned by Somerset Council at the moment. They're not planning to let that go altogether, but there is a possibility that we can have space there. One of the propositions then is really about, people will know reduce, reuse, recycle, but reuse is quite a difficult thing in Frome. So could that be, and again, this is thinking into the future, could that be a place from which we drive campaigns around reuse and drive work really around reducing the amount of waste that's produced in Frome in the first instance? And again, the win-win is, I don't know if people are aware of this, but within about 2 years, if Somerset Council don't reduce the amount of waste that is going to landfill, then they will get fined very, very substantially, and we're talking into the millions of pounds. So this is a kind of classic win-win. If we take on the asset and we can do more around waste reduction, then we benefit, the environment benefits, Somerset Council benefits. And this is really the way in which we've tried to construct this proposal, so that actually everyone wins from what we're talking about. Next section really is to do with the town centre and economic development. One of the things that the picture of Frome talks about is what's called the GVA, the gross value add of the town. And one of the quite shocking things is we will often talk about Frome being a thriving and successful place, but it is perhaps not as successful per head as many of its neighbours. And if we look at the economic profile of the town, there's a lot of hospitality employment, a lot of seasonal employment. All of these things are not necessarily the basis for real prosperity for all people. So the crux of the work around the town centre really kind of comes into two bits. We've listened to traders, we've been talking with traders for a very long time, and the real issue is to try and create an environment in which they can be creative and in which they can thrive. So much greater control over things like car parking and parking charges, over times when we can potentially close roads and have events, but also over markets, over economic development, over tourism, all of the things which at the moment are allegedly run from elsewhere, that it feels like we need to be responsible for and to take real responsibility for that. There is a huge opportunity around the market yard, a huge opportunity with the cheese and grain, huge opportunity with the Frome Riverside. All of that is an area which is currently, if you really look at it, owned by different parts of different organisations and different people. And if we could bring that together and think creatively about what we might do with it, again, there is a huge win-win for everybody within the town. I'm sorry this keeps flashing quite so much. So the first thing then is really to take, again, those assets on, to take those powers and responsibilities on. And the second thing then is to work with the town so that we can make the town centre a more successful place, building on some of the stuff that Nick has done, but taking that much, much further once we control some of those assets. And there's quite a lot of stuff in the prospectus about what the benefits of that might be. Third bit then is really to do with early help and community support. What I've just been talking about in terms of the town centre is visible to everybody, of course, but sometimes the consequences of a lack of early help are not so visible, or only visible to some people. So what do we want to do around all of this? What we've heard this evening from all of the presentations, so it's really interesting that you're using the key centre, and that there is a possibility that that might be lost. And you all use the key centre, so thank you for coming along to prove my point. Has anyone not used the key centre? So the point here being here that the town council has never really had, it's not really responsible in a sense for early help, but we are responsible for creating the conditions in which people who want to provide early help can do so more easily. And one of the key things to do with that then is places like the Key Centre, is space. And we've got space here, we've got space at the Key Centre, we've got space at Badgers Hill. There are all sorts of places where we can provide that support for people. So if people want to do the kinds of, and create the kind of community spirit that we all know exists in Frome, but to do something practical with it, then that they will be able to do that because they will have the space to do so. So that's really the kind of bedrock of our offer, or around of our request around all of that, to own the spaces in which people can do that kind of work. And then the final kind of issue then is really about sustainability. one of the benefits of opening all of the open spaces and one of the benefits of owning all of these different assets is potentially to create green routes through the town, active travel routes through the town. We've got the thing that I can never remember, the walking and infrastructure plan, which exists for Frome. People will know that there are 28,000 people in Frome, but also 27,000 cars. And where we are right now is kind of unsustainable. So we need to get to a place where active travel, and we can encourage much more active travel. And again, we need to own assets in order to be able to do that. So I won't say much more, but it's really key, I think, that if you look towards the back of the prospectus, it sets out, you probably can't read that, it sets out all of the benefits to the town of doing these things, but also all the benefits to Somerset Council of doing these things. So what I hope we can do is move beyond why not to, yes, let's really do this. We need to build momentum for this. It's great to have cross-party support for all of this and for this to be talked about now at a Somerset level. And certainly in my early conversations with Bill Revans, he's saying not only is this a really good thing, this is probably something that all towns should be doing, which is to really take control, if you like, and say, here are the things that we want to make our places better places. So I commend it to the House. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. Anybody, any questions they want to raise? I'll take Samantha first.
I've read it prior to the meeting. It's really a really amazing document. I'm very struck by the stage 3 on every single element of it, that it's very contingent on using voluntary support and non-profit support within Frome in order to achieve your dream. But that comes with a cost to the organisations that do that. When we're stretched for volunteer support, we're stretched for money. Is that likely to be something that's going to be considered within that plan? Because we can't deliver that for you without a bit of help.
So I want to say, yeah, of course. But there are two things that hold that back. So one is the overall position of the public sector, what's likely to happen at Somerset, the pressures that's likely to bring to us. The second thing to say is what we haven't yet done. We have an idea of some of the costs of these things. We won't know the exact cost of these things really until we start talking with Somerset about the terms and conditions, if you like, through which they let some of these things go. So this may be contingent, therefore, on further precept rises. And if that's the case, then we really need to think about the value, if you like, to the town and the ways in which we do that. I completely accept that none of these things are cost-free. What we're hoping is that by creating a town which has got more things within it, more people within it, more businesses within it, that we could create an environment of greater prosperity from which those kinds of activities might well benefit. But there's no easy answer to what you're saying. There are funding sources that could come from all sorts of different places, from greater prosperity, but also potentially from greater taxation. I think the other thing to say is that there is a lot. In the next few weeks, we will see this thing called the English Devolution Act, and it will be new government's way of getting money to local government. They won't go through local authorities, they'll go through all these things called combined authorities, and they will create themselves devolution deals. And so there are all sorts of ways in which we may benefit from that as well. You know, the South Yorkshire, where I work at the moment, draws down £60 million a year on devolution funding. So there's a way in which we might be able to collar some of that funding as well. So thank you.
Fiona and then Lenka.
Just wanted to add to that, because I think it's really good that you mentioned that, because to sort of bring it into focus, but because we also begin to have very early conversations around like alternative, like a Frome fund, exploring more like innovative ways of sort of creating our own funding pot so that we're all less reliant on external sources. And the fact you've mentioned that means that maybe we need to kind of, keep going with that.
Thank you. Lenka.
Yeah, I was kind of following the same theme, is that it's I did read it beforehand, and it's it's an ideal, isn't it? And I think that we need to think about all the people in Frome and prioritising what's in that document. So we're not going to be able to do it all, and there's 190 organisations in Frome, and actually we're already doing some of these things. Like talking about a reuse centre, we need to support existing organisations. Some organisations are really struggling more, or they've completely closed. So I think we need to prioritise and make sure you know, we're doing more engagement and asking everybody. So it benefits.
Sorry, asking everybody what?
The people in the community, all the different people in the community.
So I feel like we have. I feel like we have lots of conversations about what people want, and we'll hear some of that in a second.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I know that Hannah and her team have done lots of engagement, but I mean, in terms of this document, you know, this is an ideal, but we're going to have to make choices. And we can't just keep putting up the precepts because we want to do. I know, you know, some things sound great, but we have to prioritise, like any organisation.
So engagement around the choices.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
And of course, the other piece of this is that it's now going to be a conversation between us and Somerset Council anyway about what they're willing to let go of under what circumstances.
Yeah, because that then affects all sorts of issues like, you know, like precepts and all of that.
Okay. Do we need to vote on
I
this
think
topic?
you do. I think it is
to approve the draft Frome devolution prospectus. I can see Sarah proposing it. I can see Philip seconding it. Can I ask all councillors to vote? Sarah is up because she proposed it.
That's a majority, actually.
Yeah, I'm voting in favour, definitely. Sorry.
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't in the country for much of this process, and I don't feel I have a good enough handle to agree to it.
Okay, that's fine. So I think that's with a majority vote. Thank you.
Second recommendation.
Thank you.
There is, sorry,
Second recommendation.
there's a second recommendation, is there? Peter's just reminded me there's another recommendation actually to delegate authority to the Deputy Town Clerk in consultation with Councillors Tanner and Wyde to coordinate negotiations. I can see people are already voting on that one, so can we?
That's a majority.
And we'll take the same proposer and seconder. Right, thank you very much for that. We'll move on to agenda item 6, a picture of Frome.
Sorry, can I just apologise for the projector? I think the bulb is going and there's nothing I can do about that tonight. The TV is not flickering.
Hi, everybody. So if you don't know me, my name's Hannah Stopford. I'm the engagement lead with the communities team. And I'm here to talk about the recent piece of work that we carried out in the communities team to build a picture of the town that we've been referring to. So shall I wait for the slide? There's a bit of the picture, with the bit missing. So if you just go back one, Laura. That's okay. Or shall I do it with the clicker? Oh, no, don't touch anything. Okay. So we shared the main report with staff and councillors back in July, and we've also shared it with organisations in the town. And it's available to look at on our website. So tonight I'll do a brief overview and then look at some of the highlights that emerged on analysis, then some possible next steps and any questions. So shall I click it? Yes, it works. Okay. So, yes, I can. So we were asked to take this on for a few reasons. There was an update to the council plan coming up, but also it had been a while since there'd been some engagement with the town on that kind of scale, looking back at the vision for Frome in 2008 through to Participate Frome, and more recently Have Your Say, which was just before I started working for the town council in 2019. And there was a sense that between us all, we have a really good knowledge of the town and can be fairly confident that we know what the town's priorities are, but it was felt there was a need to be sure. And also, I've put in that definition about that role. So the work really fulfills that role that we play that was defined in the earlier strategy of being an advocate and a champion, engaging and listening to the community and sense checking our work. And also, just as well as engaging the town in identifying priorities, this project offered a really great opportunity to bring staff and councillors together. So before taking it wider, we kicked off with some internal workshops this time last year. So that's a picture from one of them that not only helped us pool our collective knowledge, but also gave us a chance to get to know each other a bit better. So it's very distracting, isn't it? So before we look at some of the highlights that emerged, I'd just like to emphasise some of the methodology of the approach. We knew that a robust picture of the town would need a variety of types of data and methods of capture. It was perfect timing for Liz and Emily, who are our then newly recruited engagement officers. So not only did we have their feet on the ground, but they had quite a fast-tracked introduction to the town by popping up all over it. And the thinking behind pop-ups is that you're not relying on people to come to meetings or events that you're putting on. We're meeting people where they are, so on their way to work, at the school gates, walking their dogs. Which meant we heard from a really wide range of people in that way who may not otherwise have contributed to the picture. We also spoke to community groups, both at big networking events and in focused visits with some, such as Fair Frome, Shared Earth Learning, as well as some school groups. Alongside the face-to-face engagement, we opened an online survey for a month with some in-depth questions on the emerging themes. And with the survey, as with the face-to-face work, we followed an open question approach. So each engagement centred around and began with 3 key questions. So they're up there: what's good, what are the challenges, what are the priorities? That meant we could uncover true priorities without biasing the result, and then start to identify the dominant themes as they made themselves known. So from the start and with all the interactions, we were really clear about managing expectations here, and that FTC's role wasn't necessarily about fixing every problem or having all the solutions. And then the third strand to the picture was the huge undertaking of a secondary data portrait. We commissioned Locality to do that work. They're a national membership network that support organisations working with communities. They do a lot of this kind of work for councils all over the country, and they've got access to a huge range of data, and we work with them to build data sets that link to the emerging themes. So they collected quantitative information that's comparable on a national and regional level, as well as with neighbouring towns. So as with all data, it sheds a light on one part of the picture that starts to take on meaning when it's viewed as a whole with the primary qualitative information. So there's lots to keep in mind when you're looking at secondary data, for example, when it was published, what varying factors influence the numbers. So that's why it's really important that we have the qualitative work as well to fill out that picture. And so, hang on. Okay, so outcomes, numbers are good. We managed to hear from nearly 1,000 people. It's not perfect, it's a snapshot, and we had some constraints such as time. So there are some missing voices, which I'll talk about a bit more in a minute. But actually, Locality, who, as I said, have done this kind of work in towns across the country, were very impressed by the reach of the work that we had within that. And I think it's really important to note here some of the other outcomes that we've achieved by working in this way. So firstly, Liz and Emily got lots of feedback that people in the town felt listened to by the town council, which is great. They were also able to do lots of signposting while they were out and about talking to people in neighbourhoods, so to Find or Health Connections. It helped build our understanding of different neighbourhoods and identify areas for further development work, such as in Singers Knoll, St John's, the Mount, Edmund Park. And there were some smaller specific spin-offs. So, a lot of S's, such as, so in Singers Knoll, the pop-up there acted as a kind of warm-up in the estate for a subsequent scrap play session with the pod, which was probably their most successful session. And in Ecos Court, by working with Live West, Liz and Emily matched up the seed library with the Ecos Court veg patch, and that's a partnership that's led to new child-focused activities on the estate and a refreshed community garden that had been neglected, and all it took from us really was an introduction. So it's a nice example of a very small intervention with really good knock-on effects. Another outcome is that lots of staff and councillors helped out with some of the pop-ups, and they've told us that the process of being involved in that and being out and about and hearing first-hand stories from people really raised awareness and added richness. And some of those stories were quite hard to hear about people's living conditions or children's well-being and housing, things like that. And there's something about all of that that I think gives an idea about how engagement differs from consultation exercise. And I think it's quite important that as staff and councillors, we all live or work here too. So we are those people experiencing some of those challenges who have the housing needs or families with poor mental health or difficulty finding childcare. Not that we're a representative cross-section, but it's not a project that's been carried out by anonymous people who are swooping in to do a quick assessment and then swooping back out again. We know the town, we can follow things up, we can connect people, and we can respond to things as they emerge. So I'm going to go on to what we found out. The main report sets it out in detail, and there are links to the full secondary data sets there too. We did some diligent and intense manual coding of themes, and Rachel's team very cleverly used AI to analyse what was coming out. I know Fiona also used some AI tools recently to process some of that work, and reassuringly, or maybe frighteningly, it comes out with very aligned results. So I'm going to just share some of the more interesting highlights tonight, some things that have emerged either as positive challenges or surprises, and there were some surprises. And again, just to reiterate that thing about the various roles that we step into as a council. So we've already talked about advocates, but we can be conveners, champions, signposters, providers. Unsurprisingly, some of the topics that came out are beyond the scope of a town council to find a solution for. Some are at the mercy of national or global influences. But one of our key strengths is partnership working and collaboration, and there's scope here to keep exploring those roles and those topics in different ways. So these are not comprehensive, they're just kind of a few picked out. So some of the positive things that came out, there was a really strong community spirit and connections across the town, and this was overwhelmingly referred to as something people identify as a core strength of the town. Easy access to nature and good quality parks and open spaces. There was lots of comments specifically appreciating the work of the town rangers and their approach to doing things. People love the wide variety of things to do here and the inclusive town events on offer. And people love the strong cultural and independent identity and the creative opportunities that can be found here. The list of challenges is slightly longer, sorry. So again, some of these are expected and some less so. So a lack of affordable, appropriate and available housing, we anticipated this was going to be one of the primary concerns. But there was something really moving and we added in the detail about hearing firsthand the stories about the various ways this was impacting people, and it wasn't always obvious. So, for example, the knock-on effect of family members having to move out of the town, making childcare arrangements they had with grandparents unworkable, so things like that. And those issues were backed up with the secondary data as well. Poor and worsening mental health, especially in young people. So this was a mixture of direct experience and perception that we heard. Also linked really strongly to a perception around the need for more for young people to do, which is why it's so great to hear from all the projects earlier today. The secondary data reflected some of the mental health concerns, but I think it needs to be a bit more granular to corroborate the story around young people specifically. That's something we're working on and I'll refer to in a minute. Poor road safety, again, we knew there'd be some issues around this, but I don't think we'd anticipated just how high up it was in quite a lot of people's agendas. And it includes different themes around traffic, unsafe driving, difficulty parking, interest in improving the active travel network. Poor river quality. So although people were really appreciative of the quality of our green spaces, there was definite recognition that our river is in poor health, and also that it's hidden away, not the feature of our town that it could be. Several comments around litter, graffiti, weeds and dog poo around the town, as you might expect. And we heard a lot about, and you know, as Max has been referring to in the devolution deal, the lack of community venues or insufficient community venues that are too few that are accessible and affordable. And considering we're a town that prides itself on our community spirit, we seem to have too few places where we can exercise those connections. That was really emphasised in our community organisation networking, but it's also backed up with the secondary data that highlighted we had a comparatively low score for civic assets and infrastructure. And then both the secondary data and the qualitative perception-based data highlighted a lack of meaningful and accessible work opportunities, and again, especially for young people. So there was a whole bunch of not just surprises, but also things where there were conflicts or gaps. Crime and ASB, antisocial behaviour. The perception that we heard is that these are reasonably big issues for the town, but the secondary data show comparatively low recorded incidents although within that a high percentage was around violent crime and sexual offences. So there's a contrast here between data and perception, but also a reminder that just because we compare favourably, it doesn't mean it's good. Neither is that placement of the slide, but never mind. Education emerged as a recurring topic in the face-to-face engagement, but opinions varied really widely, and we didn't have the scope in this project to really dig into that. So that feels like something that's worth exploring more. Community organisation support really links with what everybody's saying, but links with the challenge of the lack of venues. People really highly value the offer from our community organisations, and there's so many of them. But the secondary data seems to show that funding and resources for these groups is lower here than other places. And we're really seeing that in the struggles that these groups are facing, not just with funding, but as people have already said tonight, with competition for availability of people's time and skills. Inclusion and accessibility cropped up across all the themes, and it felt important to understand better how people experience being included or not here and what gaps there are. We didn't hear from business, and we really needed some extra time to record those voices. I think there was highlighted for us a bit of a gap that's left behind by Viv's role, so we don't have such an easy link with the business community, and maybe a lack of contact with groups like the Chamber of Commerce. So especially in light of the other discussions that we've been having around post-16 offers and the economic development, it feels like a good time to be reigniting those relationships. And environmental data is just really hard to find on a local level. It's not available, it's very difficult to calculate. So those are a few examples. There's more in the full report. These are the lovely dashboards that Rachel and Miles put together very speedily with lovely visual icons by one of the Open Storytellers artists, Robin Meader, who put those together to illustrate the themes. They've been really useful for snapshots and quick looks at what's been uncovered. It's quite a lot to digest, so having the information displayed like this has been extremely valuable for engaging with people on the results. We use them straight away to share with staff and councillors, with our community organisations, and during a public event at the Cheese and Grain, and we're continuing to use them at various other follow-up work, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute. Okay, what's next? What's the point? Why was it useful? What have we done? Internal work. So internally, we've used the picture of Frome already to input into priority shaping. So it's influenced the drafting of our annual work programme that's under review, and it's inputted into the devolution deal, as you've just heard. It's also been part of conversations that council have been having around setting strategic priorities. We've also just submitted a grant bid for a project around the river, and that work was really helpful for that. And community organisations, we know that some organisations have already used this information to help with setting priorities or applying for funding. The Good Heart have used some of the qualitative information and quotes to support their grant applications to some organisations, and actually Geraldine and Alice asked us to extract some of the qualitative stuff around the under fives offer. And I think Alice said that you haven't used it yet, but it was a good morale boost, which is good for any community organisation and might be helping a decision maker around whether to become a charity. So, but going forwards, we'd like to have it really easy to find and able to share, because this is the kind of stuff that's very helpful for organisations. Stakeholder groups, I couldn't get any photos to go with this, but this is the kind of stuff that we shared with them. So the project's kind of become an engagement tool in itself. So we've been able to go deeper into themes with special interest groups and stakeholders. We've taken it to the Children and Young People's Forum. There's a whole theme on health. So of course we've taken it to the Free Medical Practice. They invited us to a partners meeting, and it was really interesting there to talk about understanding the data better and what might influence it. For the Frome came out as having high numbers of people with high blood pressure compared to other places, and they wondered if maybe that's because they're better at recording it. And in the process of those conversations, we also shared a desire to work on more detailed and locally relevant data, so building something together. So we've agreed to start with one of the most prevalent topics, young people's mental health. So we're looking at how we might work on a project to build data and assess things going forwards. And if we want to discover more ways to share useful data or better understanding with any partners, this work's a great starting point for those conversations. Through this work, we've also had an introduction to the Health Determinants Research Collaborations, which which is a very catchy title. I'm still kind of getting to grips with what they're doing, but it's a really interesting piece of work which is being carried out across Somerset about researchers collaborating with local authorities to work together and use evidence to base decisions on wider determinants of health. So it is really interesting, and they were excited to hear about our approach to the community work. And we're in discussion with them about bringing some community research training into Frome, which could be quite an interesting enrichment of our engagement work going forwards. I'm going to talk about donor economics because I do that sometimes now. So a year ago when we started the work, we looked at donor economics as a starting point for an engagement framework. And so while we didn't formally adopt it as an approach, I've been continuing conversations with some of the other towns and regions that we contacted as part of that research. And I was recently invited by the Donor Economics Action Lab to attend a conference with people working in or with local governments all over the world, which was really fascinating to hear all the different ways localities are using the model to assess impact and make decisions, think about what we might use in Frome going forwards, but also if people there didn't already know about Frome, and lots of them did, it was a great forum for sharing our work and reinforcing that reputation of Frome being a place where we try new things. Kate Rayworth, who wrote the book, was very interested to hear about what we've been doing here, and her team, they've included Frome in a pilot scheme for some software they're working with that might be really valuable for plugging that gap in local ecological data. So, and actually, sorry, so when we started looking at that, we also saw the value of that model beyond what it could do for the town council. So we had a chat with Adventure in Green and Healthy Frome, seeing as it was relevant to their interest in circular economy stuff. And we took inspiration from a group in Bath who called People Planet Pint. And together we invited people to the pub to dig a bit deeper into it. And it was an open call and attracted a really interesting group of people, and it became something of a book club, which has now come to an end because we finished the book. But last week, the reason I'm talking about that is because last week we took the engagement data from the picture of Frome and used it to map what a donut for Frome might look like, which is that scribble in the corner there. So obviously it's not very scientific, but it's a good example of how the donut is a good engagement tool, but also now having the picture of Frome at our fingertips can make those conversations really meaty and meaningful rather than purely perception-based. And then I'm just going to end on just a quick recap then of what we've achieved with the project. So the town feels listened to. We've had staff and councillors working together. We've got a robust quantitative and qualitative data set, a deeper understanding of community perceptions and experiences, more confidence in our priorities, focus for future work, both whether it's around topics around neighbourhoods, new partnerships, new focuses for existing partnerships, and valuable intelligence for local community organisations. The end.
Okay. Thank you, Hannah. Has anybody got any questions on that, Nick?
Hi.
I think it's an extraordinary piece of work. And I applaud you for your leadership role and what you've done with it. My concern is how much does it cost us? And it feels like it's a lot of the, frankly, I wasn't surprised by any of the outcomes, what we found out. I went to the day at the football club when we listened. I was waiting for something. It was great to have that data from the organisation whose name I can't remember where we brought in the data. Locality, thanks very much, because it reinforced some of the things that I thought. But it feels like you are operating at a level that is probably more strategic and more senior than you expect from a town council. I think that we are in danger of trying to take on things that we can't possibly deliver on. But I think it's brilliant. I think that the neighbourhood networks that you set up and work, I think that side where we're building an understanding of what's happening at a neighbourhood level and seeing the communities thrive and build up is brilliant. But I just worry how much money this has cost. I talk about opportunity costs with our staff, how many days we spent doing this, and what the actual outcome was. But please don't take that as me taking away from any of the great work you've done and your team have done. It's just my fear of going forward. What do we do with this, and how do we understand that?
Is there a question in there that you want me to answer?
I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for a full breakdown of the cost to come to me, which was asked for a while ago.
Who did you ask, sorry? So is that a breakdown of the staff time? Because I think that's the only cost involved. I can pull that together.
It was a request for what is the project cost in terms of staff time, opportunity cost that they, when we brought in all the staff to discuss it, hire the managers, all those kind of things.
Yeah, I don't think that's something Hannah's going to have. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's, and I'm not going to sort of attempt to ask that, but it sort of fits nicely. I mean, I think, again, reiterate what Nick said. It's a brilliant piece of work, and I think it is really useful. I think that as a town council, we operate within like a wider ecosystem of Frome, and although we have a very specific role to play, we don't actually have any role to play in a way. Like, we make our own role, right? Like, we don't actually have any statutory responsibilities. So I think that it is really helpful to have this information. But I guess going forward, I'm personally really interested in sort of bringing people in on our decision making as well, and sort of engaging a bit more like specifically about the work that we do as a council, I guess, and sort of understanding from people what they think about us as a council and what we're doing, and sort of bringing people in and sort of moving, I guess, more towards like deliberation and participation, sort of going forward, I guess. But I think it's brilliant. I think it is really good, and I think there's lots that it is about that sort of that background, and even just the fact that we've got it. And I didn't realise my like little scribbles on that piece of paper were going to be used so often. I was in the donut economics doing the mapping, and I was just like, oh yeah, I think it's here. Like, let's sort of put that, and then you've used that twice since then. I'm like, okay, would have been a bit more careful. But it is, having that information does mean that like we're already finding it really useful, right? The river project and everything, it does just help to have it available. But I guess sort of, going forward, and we've been talking about, an online platform, which I think would be really, really helpful. And I think there's lots more that we can do in this area. But I guess it's just sort of having done the wider stuff, maybe now it's time to it would be good to do some more focused stuff.
I think Lisa wanted to come in, and then I've got a couple of people over there, but I'm aware it's already 10 minutes to 9, so we do need to move forward.
Thank you. I'll be super quick. Just kind of picking up on what Lenka had said before about the devolution plan. Is there any future work with the engagement team and devolution, and how are we reaching out to the community? Is there a plan for that?
Max?
No. I would say that, sorry, the microphone. So no, there hasn't been thus far. The two projects have had very little to do with each other, which I think is a real shame. But I think there were a series of moments, if you like, when they could have come together and kind of didn't, because I think that some of the engagement you might have done might have pursued some of those devolution themes or asked questions about devolution topics. But, I feel like, my own take on this is that it is an amazing piece of work and a really fulsome piece of work, but there were times, I think, when choices were made about who to engage and about what, that I feel we could have had more say in. It just felt like the project was set and the project did what the project did. And it's not to take away from anything that was been presented tonight, but it could, I think, perhaps have been done differently. I absolutely agree. The prospectus, if you like, is the beginning, I hope, of a conversation. But it's a conversation which is based not just on this, but on all sorts of conversations that we've had down the years, really, with traders, with community groups, about what they feel that they may need in order to be more effective and more successful. So, I think the two things need to come together, absolutely, because, as I say, the prospectus is the beginning of a conversation, not the end of one.
Okay, thanks. Anne?
A fantastic piece of work. My hope is that this data is useful not only to us but to all of our community groups, and bringing in external funding into the town. My hope is, rather than looking at that as a piece of work that has now finished, is that this is the heart of all of our data gathering that is continued. So whatever the cost, I think this is the heart of what we are as a council. How can we possibly design projects, collaborate, build partnerships if we don't know where we're at and we don't know where we want to be? So we've got to gather data and continue to gather data. So my question is about the longevity of this data, my hope is that it's not a snapshot, that we continue to gather data throughout time so that we perfect our picture of the town.
Yes, I was going to say I don't think anybody understood it to be a piece of work like we've done that and now we've understood, and and actually what is really interesting is the fact that some of the bigger topics that's come up, it would be great to engage with people in different ways and use different methods and processes, and to be constantly kind of evolving that.
Just before I come to Jane, there's a lady at the back there wanted to make a comment.
Yeah, you briefly mentioned the groups of people that perhaps were not given opportunities for their voices to be heard, and I just wondered, if any work has been done in identifying who those people might be in the town, and is there going to be any future work to try and gather those voices?
Yeah, that's right. So I sort of briefly mentioned business. We didn't have much to do with business, and also education. So, I mean, that's really broad. That's like, a whole lot of parents and young people themselves. We did target community organisations that work with people that wouldn't necessarily have automatically fed into the...
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about the street work and things, and there are a lot of people in this town that don't leave their houses or don't interact in those public spaces and things. So it's good to hear that you did engage with the organisations that might have been supporting those people.
And do you mind if I just follow up on that? Because I think I also mentioned at the start that we part of that work really helped to identify some targeted neighbourhoods that we're working in. So one of our engagement officers is working in St John's and one is working in the Mount, and part of that work is door knocking and working street by street and knocking on doors and finding people and talking to people in that way. So it's taking it forward in a more...
Okay, thanks, Hannah. Jane?
I'll be quick. The question that Adam raised earlier about whether we were responding to the local plan consultation. So I think I just wanted to highlight how key the information that we've got back from this engagement is to responding to that, because it specifically asks you to rank your priorities, in about affordable housing, education and so on. And we also, we need to back that up, how we rank them. So this piece of work will be crucial in that. And the importance of the local plan is that, it sets policy for 20 years. So our affordable housing, protecting our open spaces, all the things that we've been talking about in the prospectus are key to that.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Hannah, and your team for that work. Right, moving on, we have agenda item 7, which is the thrillingly complex topic of the Oversight Committee.
So as Paul Wynne isn't here this evening, I'm just going to very briefly introduce this. This was trailed really at our last council meeting. There are some proposals in this report which are about extending the remit, strengthening the remit of the Oversight Committee, and they're particularly in the area of human resources, but also to extend the terms of reference to include all aspects of community engagement and participation, including organisational support and the Welcome Hub. I'm not going to go into detail. I assume that all councillors have had an opportunity to read the proposals, and obviously we'll take any questions. If anyone has any questions, it looks as though everyone's ready to take the vote on this.
Yeah, we've all done our homework.
That's good.
So I've got a proposer. We'll take Anne Hills as proposing and Mark Dorrington as seconding.
And that's unanimous.
Okay, thank you. And then the final item 8 is still with you, Peter, for an update on Badgers Hill.
Okay, just two things to note really. The first is in relation to the repair and improvement project. We're on the verge now for start on that, which I'm sure you'll be delighted with. We've been working very closely with the Community Benefit Society to get this over the line over a considerable period of time. So that's very positive. And the other thing is on behalf of the CBS is a shout out with regards to the AGM. There's an opportunity here for people to join the CBS board, to strengthen it, and the rules have been changed, which means that you only need to have been a member of the CBS for 2 weeks in order to become to be nominated to become a board member. I know that there's a lot of work going on to raise the profile of this. This is really important for the CBS to ensure that it's successful and sustainable into the future. So I'd encourage you all to share that information across your networks. Yes, so there's not long to go to get nominations in.
Can I just ask a little question about the membership will be free for further 12 months for those who are already members? Does that mean that anybody who's a member now will continue to be a member for the next 12 months?
That's my understanding, and that their membership will be free.
Okay, so I know that there are councillors in here who are members of the CBS and they have a vote in the next election. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. And on the stroke of 9 p.m, I think we can close this meeting.